Welcome to Inside the 18. I'm Michael Magid, live from Hollywood, California. Yes, I love that standing ovation or sitting ovation that I just got from 99 World Cup winner Saskia Weber, who, by the way, she got a brand new microphone, everybody, and we're really excited. We can't wait. We can't wait. It's right there, and we can't wait to set that one up. But before we get into that, we just have such a special guest today that's going to be joining us, as you can tell from Omar Zeenni, also known as Pro GK Academy's 3D England backdrop right there. We have England women's senior goalkeeper coach, Mark Mason, on the show today. Shout out to the FA for making this happen, by the way.
Right
Mark,
on.
thanks for doing this, man. This is awesome.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. Absolute pleasure.
I mean, look, one of the things is that like when we have somebody of like your stature who's doing so much like great instruction work out there, like we really have to make sure that we try to find a topic that is worthy for that person. And, you know, instead of doing like, oh, I don't know, you know, something like why is David De Gea not doing well at Manchester United, which is apparently what everyone just talks about, or why Joe Hart is out of contract. We're like, I don't know, maybe we can get a little more into the weeds with someone with like Mark and really get into his expertise. So before kind of we start into the episode, Mark, why don't you just explain to the audience out there who might not be familiar with what you're doing for the FA, kind of like the online learning program that you guys have been doing?
Yeah, so I suppose going back to the start of my time at the FA, so I've been working in and around the teams at the FA for the last 4 years. Started off in the men's department, working with the youth team, goalkeepers and teams throughout their pathway, and then over the last 2 years, since Phil coming as manager, I've been working with the women's senior team. So I suppose from a progression point of view, working with the different age groups, working on the men's side and the women's side, it's been an unbelievable journey and experience in a short space of time. Alongside the teamwork that I've done, I came into the FA working within the coach education department as well. So I spent a lot of time delivering on our Advanced Youth Award, which is a fantastic course looking at football coaching, looking at goalkeeper coaching, perhaps through a slightly different lens to what the other courses would look at coaching as. Putting a real focus on the social, psych, physical sides of the game, as well as the tech and tying it all together. So that's been a really enjoyable part of my role at the FA, and one that's been really rewarding in terms of working with coaches, and then on the other side working with players within the team. So I've been really fortunate. I think we've probably been forced into obviously the current situation that the whole world's in is perhaps looking at things slightly differently. So as well as probably what we've been offering, being able to offer something slightly different, and obviously the world of online webinars and the things like we're doing tonight, and online coaching courses are the way forward in certain environments at certain times. So it's been a really positive step. So out of probably a little bit of a bad situation and adversity, there's been lots of positives to come out. So we've spent a lot of time on webinars talking about goalkeeping topics, having some fantastic discussion with some fantastic people. And I know we spoke about it before, doing some, we call it pass the gloves on, but a series of goalkeeping interviews with goalkeepers and coaches, which myself and Tim Dittmer have been sort of presenting. And they've just been a fantastic opportunity, something that probably started off with an opportunity for our goalkeepers and coaches to share their experiences with the listeners, but actually letting the goalkeepers and coaches talk about their own experiences and actually start to unpick a few of their own thoughts. It's amazing how much you learn about yourself when you talk about your experiences and your understanding of certain situations. So no, it's been a massively rewarding time, and some fascinating insight. So yeah, that's where we're currently at. Obviously, my role with the senior women, my main role is working with the goalkeepers as well as being a specialist set play coach. So my responsibility around attacking and defending set plays as we go into games, as we go into competitions, and that they're ongoing processes that we're sort of working on when we're not with the players in terms of how we deliver and what we're going to deliver. And then obviously on the grass with the players leading into games. So yeah, a real broad responsibility from I suppose the goalkeeper coaches who are watching and listening will probably appreciate this. I think we get called goalkeeper coaches, but actually your role within a coaching staff, within a coaching team is a lot broader than that. You do work with set plays, you do work on building the attack in the distribution side of the game, and then how do you connect the goalkeeper with the team throughout the game. So I think we have to give credit to the goalkeeper coaches around the world for actually what they're capable of doing. It's not just working with goalkeepers.
Well, I think we just had that conversation with Franz Hook about that you're not, you know, and we all believe that. It's not even, it doesn't even stop there. Just organizing your defense and communication and that aspect moving forward. You're not, the gone are the days, hey, go kick the ball to those kids in the corner. You know, and when I need them, come on out and I'll do everything. No, we are the experts on that. And if you're not, then get your education on. And the one thing that this has given us, this shutdown worldwide and everything, is we're talking to you. And we've talked to Franz Hook, and we've this goalkeeper community has gotten even smaller and closer, and we're able to pick everybody's minds. And it's been, I hope, and I said this, I hope that doesn't stop. I hope that when things open back up, we still do these type of Zoom calls. We still have these type of collaborations and everything, because it's only going to make our goalkeeping better. Period.
I mean, look, Omar and I. No, go ahead. So.
No. I was just gonna say off the back of that, it is something so important that we do in terms of the sharing process. And just going back to the point around being in the corner, like I really truly believe, having worked with a lot of goalkeeper coaches from a coach education point of view, that a lot of it is a confidence thing. Having the ability, you've got the knowledge inside, and you understand the game as a goalkeeper coach. Is having that ability and that confidence to go and have the conversation that you need to have. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, let's say you're delivering a session with players, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that you as the goalkeeper coach have to be the main voice in that session. Right. But how much of an impact have you had on perhaps the coach who is delivering, and what have the conversations been that have enabled actually the session to be designed and delivered in a way that it makes it as real for the goalkeeper and the players, and the connections that are actually going on in the sessions are the same that they would be in the game. It's about the conversation and the discussion and the joint belief, rather than actually having to be the voice.
Right. It's about the preparation. And I said one of the greatest gifts I've gotten being at UCLA is that Amanda and I have known each other for so long that, you know, she trusts me and my vision, and she's watched me grow up as I've watched her. And so, but when we coach and when we're doing something like set pieces or whatever, it's a collaboration. It's something that we've had a discussion about way before, with Jane, with Sam, with all the assistant coaches. So we're all on the same page. And it's not necessarily that I'm leading it, but it's that I am leading a part of it. And that whether it's defensive organization or goalkeeper positioning or whatever is going on, we're all on the same page. And yes, that is the growth of the goalkeeper coach. And it's weird to say just a goalkeeper coach. I agree with you. It's assistant coach across the board.
But I think that's like such an important thing right there. And like, I remember Omar, when you first went into the college game, you had come from for lack of a better term, an isolated goalkeeper training environment for the most part. You had either been doing private sessions or you'd been doing youth clubs where you didn't have a lot of integration with the team. And you even told me, I remember when you first stepped into it, this was the first time I'd been in an office setting where I'd been actually having meetings and communicating and understanding what the team needs from me outside of just, for lack of a better term, working on the technical and tactical aspects of goalkeeping.
For sure. Yeah. I think that was definitely a learning curve that I had to, hop on pretty quickly, or else I get left behind. And I think that gave me an idea of you know, you can have an idea of what you're going to do for a session, but actually vocalizing it and being forced in that office setting to articulate as a coach, why are you choosing to do this? And why is it going to benefit the team? And why should the team stop everything to help you as a goalkeeper coach out? So it wasn't so much I had to convince the coach, but he was always like, I'm going to give you the floor. We're all ears, all the coaching staff. You need to verbalize what you need from us and why you need us. And if I feel like that's a good that's a good direction for us to go, Omar, I'll listen to you. And if not, I'll give you my advice. So I've always had, in the last 2 years, I've had really good mentors giving me the idea of you need to have backing behind anything you do. And I feel like that's allowed me to conceptualize from a goalkeeper's perspective of like, if I want to run a session, let me ask the goalkeepers and have them articulate what they need from me as a coach and why they need it. And I felt like stepping into that office setting helped me translate that same thing with my goalkeepers. And I'm realizing now that every goalkeeper has a different psychology. They learn in different ways. They have a different teaching style, and they have things that I have to say or do or don't say or do that allow them to maximize their potential. So I think, yeah, that office setting was huge, but also too, it led me to allow my goalkeepers to have more of a voice as well.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, like I've discussed this multiple times for some reason in the past week. This has come up, not here, but it's given that opportunity. Like my sessions are with, like, let's say with UCLA, even though I've only been there since January, like I build on the things that I've seen that each individual goalkeeper needs to work on in that time that I have them. And then as I build that, I build into the session at hand that they're going into with the field players, because they're always used. So they're always brought in to play and competition and everything. But it's making sure they're ready for what they have to do once they get on the field with the team, and what they also need to work on individually, and curtailing your session so you can do both. And I know it might sound like a lot to people, but it's not. I mean, it's not. But you have to be able to get that in, and both in at the same time. You know, so-and-so needs to work on like her explosion to a right-hand side, this and that, and the other. This person's working on their timing, like coming off their line, and the team is working on this. So how do I make my session so I'm getting all of this stuff in, and at the time that I'm releasing my goalkeepers, in a sense, into the full team session, they're ready for that, as well as they've worked on what they need to work.
Well, you know, Saskia, it's great that you're bringing up right now, you know, kind of multitasking in regards to several different factors or different variables going on at the same time, because I think it kind of lends into this topic. And for those of you guys who are not familiar, today's topic is going to be understanding how to hold the near post, when to commit, when not to commit, those types of things. Mark, we had a little bit of a discussion about this, you know, over text message yesterday, and it is something where, for a lot of parents out there who might not be familiar with what we're talking about, can you kind of like, you know, just succinctly kind of explain what we mean by holding the near post?
Yeah, so obviously there'll be, we call it at the FA defending the goal effectively, in terms of if you're being attacked in the 18-yard box or outside the 18-yard box from that angled type approach, which might be an angle that's more towards the edge of the 18-yard box, or starting to get towards the byline for like a crossing or a cutback position. What position is an effective position for a goalkeeper to take up to either effectively defend the goal from a shot, or potentially defend the area, which it might be from a cutback ball or a crossed ball. So it's that process of a goalkeeper picking up a position in relation to the ball on the pitch. And obviously we're talking specifically about those type of angled cutback positions. And something that if you watch really closely those situations in games, every goalkeeper will have a slightly different strategy of dealing with. And any approach is not necessarily right or wrong. And I suppose we see it when a mistake's made or when a goal is scored. It can be highlighted and pulled apart and picked apart. It doesn't necessarily mean that style is wrong or that approach is wrong. It might just not have worked in that scenario and in that moment, depending on what the situation was. So yeah, that's the situation we're obviously going to talk about, and I think it's one that perhaps it might sound simple to people, but actually it's a very in-depth probably discussion, and there'll be lots of opinions. I'm hoping there's lots of opinions. I think it would be great to sort of discuss it and throw them around.
Well, again, guys, if anybody here is right now in the live feed right now, feel free to add some questions, add some comments. We want to hear from you. Shout out to Insider, also University of Virginia women's goalkeeper coach, Jake Davis, who posted a great video on Twitter this weekend in regards to Dean Henderson's decision and David De Gea's decision, which he ironically kind of compared and contrasted the two and how they both led to different scenarios. Again, there is no right or wrong way. There's just different ways to approach things. And, one thing that I really kind of want to bring up is that, Omar, we talked about this. We talked about, making sure that in your sessions, you understand how to develop a session so the goalkeeper understands how to see the picture of the entire play developing rather than just the final actions. And I think that's one of the problems with highlights personally. And Saskia, we've spoken about this as well too. And by that, I mean the empty chair that's right there. We discussed the fact that when you're just looking at the highlights, it's not showing you the full picture. And so, Omar, why don't you kind of elaborate what we were talking about?
Yeah, no, I think it all circles back to the conversations I've had with, top goalkeeper coaches, Tim Dittmer, Phil Wedden. And, when I ask them questions of how do you design your sessions to make them.
Saskia Weber. Yeah.
Well, like, how do you design your sessions?
You got to have an English accent, Saskia.
I'm just kidding.
But no, how do you design your sessions to replicate a game situation as familiar to the goalkeeper as possible? And they always say, like really break down the scenario that you're trying to replicate for your goalkeepers and simulate, and look at the actions prior to the final action. And I think, again, like you said, Mike, most of the highlights, we only see the final action and we never get to see the boring stuff per se. But for us as coaches, it's important because we need to see where their starting point was. And that tells us a lot based off of where the goalkeeper, I guess, eventually makes their final decision. So I think that's what we started to discuss, Mike, is can we peel that back one more layer? And instead of the final action, like we talk about sometimes, having a ball at the end line, the goalkeeper just standing at the end line and then waiting for a cutback, can we turn that into a coach on top of the 18, on the corner of the 18, who decides to play an overlapping run or take a touch inside and shoot? So now the goalkeeper has to decide, okay, am I going to step to the shot or am I going to drop off to the angle? And I think doing that, simulating that, allows the goalkeeper not only to have effective starting points, but also to actually react and have muscle memory in their movements so that, for example, if they started the angle right here and they move to the near post, some kids, they go so fast to the near post that they don't have any weight to redistribute back to the far post if the ball gets crossed. So showing them those movements and then having them kind of trial and error, figure it out so that once we have a game situation, hopefully based on the session, they were able to apply that.
Yeah.
Well, everything should be used. Like, look, and we discussed this after Franz took you to school. They got upset with you, but
I don't know if he took me to school. I wouldn't say that.
Well, I'm going to say took you to school. I retracted that. I think that we don't all have like a full team to train our goalkeepers. Like we discussed that and everything like that. And some coaches that are doing privates, I get it. If you can utilize other players and everything, then everything should be fluid. Nothing should be stagnant. Nothing should be like, here's a pile of balls at the end line, like 7 yards, 10 yards off the 6, and let me just like come to the near post, I'm going to slide a ball. Everything should be fluid. Everything should be a pass and movement, because the weight of the pass makes the difference. The touch that you get off the pass makes the difference of how that player is going to play the near post. So everything is different. So just to stand there with a pile of balls and just like knock balls across isn't going to simulate anything. And the more people you can throw into the situation, how I feel about big blow-up dummies, the more people you can throw into the situation that are obstructing and getting into somebody's peripheral and making it as
I think they're fantastic points. And one of the things I always I've asked the keepers a lot more previously. I haven't asked it so much now, and it's got me thinking. But I tend to ask the goalkeepers, when does this happen in a game? So we're doing a session. I go, right, when does this happen in the game? And if they can't tell me, then I've got something wrong as a coach. They should be able to see the situation, understand the situation, and feel the situation. I think that's really important, because if you're just putting on a session and there's no thought behind it, and there's no understanding about where it fits in with the game, how do you actually expect the goalkeeper to recognise it in the game and be able to deal with it in a game if they don't know where it fits? I totally agree. I think if you can make it as real as possible, that's the most important thing. And you have to be resourceful with that, like you say. It might be that you can get the players that you need. It might not be.
Right, it might not be.
Have to,
like Omar uses a rebounder, fine. You know what I mean? At least that's movement of the ball. Like you pass the ball to yourself, get whatever comes off the rebound, the goalkeeper has to react to it and go from there. But at least it's movement. Like don't be stagnant. You know, gone are the days that I'm just sitting here and you're just like catch.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mike, and Mark, for you too, I have some footage. I have 2 approaches on cutbacks. I've posted these before.
Mark, I am so happy that my stuff's on like 8mm, so like this doesn't happen.
Oh, I would have broken Saskia's stuff down. But I want to show you. There's 2 approaches here, and I think from these 2 approaches, we can kind of just decide. We can have a discussion on them. The first one here, you'll see. Let me just share my screen. The first one you'll see here is a goalkeeper who is already almost preparing for the cutback and has already decided that he's going to prepare for the shot. So if you watch his body here, he's already opened up completely.
Yeah.
So now he's like square to the shot potentially. And I'll show it here.
Can you slow that down?
Let's slow it down and look where the defender is. It makes a difference. Do you see what I'm saying? So like it makes a difference. Everything makes a difference.
Does it again right here. You see how open he is already. He's already just like preparing for the next one.
Right, because look at the distance that the player is. He's on the edge of the 18, and he's his ball. Like this is my point. My point is that he on that second one. Okay, even here, right? Look at the pressure from the defense. What is he going to do with that? He doesn't really have an angle. He's running. The ball's actually running away from the goal, right? So the ball's running away from the goal here. He's sliding in. He doesn't really have the angle, so you kind of can cheat. On the second one, the same thing. He takes a touch away. He's going outside the 18. So really, what option does he have? You know, he's looking. Yep. He's going to look to serve. So as a goalkeeper, the more you see those situations, the more you can. And I will say cheat. I will use that word. The more you can say, okay, what in those split seconds, what really, obviously you have to watch the near post. It's the most important thing. Your goal is the most important thing. But there are certain situations and pressure and pace of the ball that you can say he really doesn't have an option here other than.
But I also want to bring up this right now. And Mark, I want to know how you feel about this. I think it also has a lot to do with his start. His shape in general is going to dictate as well how he opens up to that too. Based on the way that he's standing, he can do that. If he was more of in a tight, compact shape, he wouldn't be able to do that.
I mean,
look at
this.
Look how.
But what is he going to do from 14 yards out, ball trailing with the defense? Is he going to? Can he shoot this ball? If he does, he might have scored.
I think
he might have scored.
It's I think they're really interesting debates, and again, like I say, you every game you watch, you'll see these situations, and they're fascinating how different people deal with them, and everyone will have different views on them. My personal opinion, and I mean that picture that's just on the screen there, in terms of more of a square body shape, the next one, the one with more of a square body shape, I think it's interesting. You go, which position are you best placed to actually deal with all eventualities? Right. So let's say, for example, in the first clip, we're saying that the angle that the ball's going, 18-yard box, slightly away from goal. You've got a defender tracking back. The shot becomes quite difficult. But
what if it gets a rebound?
Yeah, for sure. So a shot could happen. So I have to be prepared to defend my goal.
Right.
But I would also go from the point of view of defending the area. Does that open body stance, now looking at it from a point of view of diving now, does that open body stance allow you to cut that ball out if it was travelling fast around 4, 5, 6 yards out across
so
the line?
If it's a slotted ball across.
See, that's my concern about that, and that's why I was bringing up that shape right there, Mark. And I thank you for doing that, because like I just don't think that if that ball is played like that he can react to that ball.
No.
He's caught.
Yeah. So what I would say, and that's where that ball actually goes, you could argue, do you know what? Could the goalkeeper, even if they were square, affect that ball? And the answer is probably no. They probably couldn't come out and affect that.
And neither on this one. Because
because of the lofted.
And but also, even if he played it, if you watch that first step is back into his goal. Like I was taught, and I'll just tell you, things have changed and everything like that. 3-goal situation, like, you know, like I've got my goal, I've got from my post to the top of the 6, and then I have from the far post to the top of the other 6. 3-goal situation. That's what Tony used to call it. Yeah. So how can I, number one, protect my goal? Sorry, nobody gets any point in that thing. Number one. Number two, how can I cut off that slotted ball? Like, what's my range? Like, how can I post up to the sense that I can watch my near post, but then I can, if that ball is slotted in between the end line and the 6, can I make a play on that ball? Can I change its trajectory? If I can't, then I drop step and I cover the goal.
Yeah. Hold on, Mark. So Omar, what do you put painting right here, just so Mark to give him an idea of what you're bringing up right here?
Yeah, no, I just won the guy from Vancouver. Just I noticed his position. He was completely square, turning it into, like we talk about. I just want to show the opposite of one. They kind of held the line a little bit. Even on this one, he's so square, and I don't think that even if it was a little bit more inside like the last play, he still would have done this. He's very similar to the 3-goal situation where he wants to cut that space off completely, and I think he's most comfortable doing that. So I'll just let it play real quick and we talk about it.
Okay.
But at the same time, you have a defender standing right next to you. Look at this. There's a defender at the 4-yard mark. So, I mean, even if this ball's slotted, like, I see what you're saying. He's squared off.
Yeah. So for me, it's all about you owning that process and that situation. So if I'm looking at it and I'm switching it now into the attacker's eyes, so I've got the ball at my feet, I take a touch out or I'm driving. What do I see when I get my head up? If I see the first image, I see the goalkeeper, open body shape, quite close to the post. I've got this visual corridor that I'm going to hit potentially. I'm going, right, this is the danger zone. I know the keeper can't get there. I think this is a dangerous ball. It gives them a corridor to aim for. If I'm the player now, getting my head up and seeing the goalkeeper in that front post position, squared off, I'm going, right, can I beat him at the front post? Now, it would have to be an unbelievable strike probably to beat someone, but it could take a deflection. But I'm going, right, I feel pretty confident in my positioning. And this is where I think you have to go, can I get beaten at my front post? Can I get beaten? You're just constantly asking yourself that question. If the answer is no, you can perhaps afford to take a little bit more and to be a little bit more brave in those situations. But what I would be saying is, I'm going to dictate to you as the opposition player on the ball where I want you to play the ball. Now, I'm not going to let you beat me at the front post. I'm not going to let you play that nice little cutback ball which allows someone to tap it in from 4 yards. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make you stand it up, and I'm going to make you have to deal with the ball at the back post as an attacker against my fullback, my right side centre back in that situation.
Which is the hardest ball to play. Yeah, the runs have to be right.
Absolutely.
That's what you want. Like, if you give them nothing, if you don't give them the slotted ball, if you don't give them the near post shot, and they have to do that cheeky cross, that's high level mistake. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But if you're not if your team's not marking up back there, then that's there. You got some asses to run.
For sure. And I think you then look at the point of view of, right, okay, from a goalkeeping point of view, and now I've got time, because it has to be lofted. I've got more time to turn my head first and foremost, right, to actually see the picture and make that decision about what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, where I'm going to travel to. And then that time to actually physically move, turn, open up, and then choose your footwork to get across and deliver. I think that's the bit for me where I'd go, first and foremost, I'd rather it go there, or I'd rather it be cut back deeper. So I'd rather it be cut back towards my penalty spot or edge of the 18-yard box.
Yeah,
absolutely. So now I have got time to turn. I've got time to get back in between the posts. I've got time to defend the goal and buy myself some time. And that for me is where that position of more of defending that, call it a sort of 4-yard goal from the front post, 4 yards out, with that body stance for me is really effective. But what I would say is, if that's something that you really believe in as a coach, you have to make a decision about how you're going to coach and what you're going to coach. But also, what if a goalkeeper comes along, like the first goalkeeper you saw, and they're brilliant at doing it that way? So as a coach, and I have to say, going back to when I first started coaching, I wanted everyone to be a goalkeeper how I thought they needed to be a goalkeeper. The textbook, this is what we have to do, this is how we do it, and everybody's going to do the same thing. As I've coached more and more, longer and longer, become probably more experienced, and worked with different goalkeepers and different types, I've realised that actually there isn't one perfect goalkeeper. Everybody's different, and everyone will do things in different ways. And who am I as the coach, who's in that privileged position to go, stop doing that, you need to start doing this, because it's a dangerous game to play. Because you might just miss something, you might just miss the next trend, you might just miss the next goalkeeper who's going to be the one that everybody's talking about, because they've discovered a way of doing something so effectively that no one's ever thought of doing it before. And I've become so much more aware of that as a coach now.
Well, we talk about that on the show a lot. It's gray, and we know it's not black and white anymore. It's not, this is the way to do it, this is the way to handle through balls, this is the way to handle breakaways, it's the way to handle crosses and stuff like that. Like, 1 foot, 2 foot, this, that, the other. You have to look at each goalkeeper individually for their strength, Absolutely. Their weaknesses, and the spin move as to not the spin move, like when to use it, when not. All those things depend on the keeper. And if you try to fit all your goalkeepers into your little egg crate and everybody's supposed to be the same, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
No, for sure. And you think about the different profiles of goalkeepers and who's good at doing what, and that should really be your answer in terms of actually what is my goalkeeper fantastic at? What's their real super strength in those situations, which is going to make them successful at dealing with X situation. That might be the situation we talk about. It might be another situation. But ultimately, what is their strength that allows them to deal with that situation so effectively? Now, if it isn't being in that front post position to defend the goal, but also defend the area, then it might look something different. But what's really important is that the connection between the goalkeeper and the defenders, or the goalkeeper and your teammates, that there's a real understanding of how that looks, and it takes us back to that training scenario. So if I'm a goalkeeper who actually, I like to get to that position, but you know what, as that player drives into the box from that angle, I'm going to get down the line of the ball, I'm going to start to travel, I'm going to be aggressive, and I'm going to go and instill my game, myself on that player to dictate play. Does my defender know that that's a likely action that I'm going to take, and what are you going to do to help me? So if I'm a goalkeeper leaving the line and I'm going, has my defender dropped in to give me support, perhaps on the line or a little bit deeper, so that if I am beaten, I've got some security? And that understanding only happens when you work together in tandem, and have that clear alignment of strengths and weaknesses, and what you're likely to do in certain scenarios.
Mark, I'm glad you brought that up, because Omar and we literally had a discussion yesterday in regards to Ederson. In regards to the situation that happened with everybody, with Ederson this weekend, and a lot of the comments that were coming up online in regards to, oh my gosh, well, when you play like this, things like this are going to happen. And we had the discussion that you have to have a discussion with your team and your goalkeeper, and you need to know what the team is comfortable with you doing. And you need to know, like, okay, if you bring in this goalkeeper, like you're talking about profiles, right? If you bring in this type of goalkeeper, you're going to have to understand this can happen when you play like this. But do the positives outweigh that, and are you willing to take that risk? And obviously, in the case of Man City, absolutely they are.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is where you see the Man City situation. You've got someone who really understands their style of play. You've got a team and players who really understand that style of play. And I think that's paramount in terms of having a successful team, that there's a real understanding about how you play the game, and how each player within it what their profile is, what their position is, and what their role is within the team to facilitate the style of play that you're going to play. Now, I mean, you spoke obviously about the Edison scenario in terms of how he plays the game in possession, how he supports play. Now, the goals that perhaps come at times from it are a small price to pay for the benefits that come from it. Because they're living and dying by their philosophy and their style of play, and that's brave. And for me, if you can stick to it and you really believe in it, you will be successful at it. Now, if you then look around all the style of play that goalkeeper has to be able to possess, or the profile of that goalkeeper, that becomes really, really key and really important. So if we're talking about, let's say, as a style of play, our team high press, we like to be up the pitch, we like to win the ball up high. The nature of that is that my goalkeeper has to be the type that is prepared to take up higher start positions, that is going to be more proactive, and allow my defenders to get a little bit higher up the pitch. You relate that back to session design, and then you say, okay, how many times do we have discussions when we're designing sessions around pitch sizes? We have discussions around pitch sizes all the time. And we go, well, what does the game require? What do we want our team to do? What do we need our players to be able to do? Well, if we want to put them in realistic situations, then we need full pitch, because actually, if we're going to be higher pressing, we want my goalkeeper to be higher, we need to give them the opportunity to do that and feel it and connect with their centre backs and go, do you know what? No, it's okay that you're going to go that high, because I'm going to be here. Trust me, I'll be with you. I'll support you. And we have to give our players the opportunity to practice that. And the only way to do that is by doing it in realistic areas, realistic sizes. Now, depending on loading, you can't do that all the time, and you have to manage that, of course. But the more we can expose them to that, we go, right, okay, now my goalkeeper's practicing taking up a positive start position.
Yeah.
Now my defenders are taking up a positive start position. Do you know what? Now the ball's just been played in behind us, and my defender now knows what it feels like to have to get on the turn and recover back, and understand the distances they're going to have to deal with in terms of, is the keeper dealing with it? Have I got to deal with it? What does it look like? So I think that's so key in terms of understanding style of play, understanding what it means for the players, and then how the sessions that we design and how the sessions we deliver replicate that to allow them to practice it. Really, really key.
Yeah, I love what you said there in regards to the dimensions thing, because this is one of the things, and Saskia and Omar and I, we've talked about this on the show. In the United States, and I don't know how it is in the UK, but it's very difficult for us to get a full pitch for a session. And so generally it's a smaller numbers, and you try as much as possible to replicate the dimensions. The problem I've seen personally, and I don't know, Saskia or Omar, how you guys feel about this, but I've had situations where, because of the dimensions that I'm dealing with, my goalkeepers are learning bad habits, right? And we're talking about holding the near post, right? Well, if the dimensions are wrong, if it's a smaller size goal, if the width of the box is smaller, that sort of thing, they start dealing with scenarios in a way that's artificial to the actual full size field. So Mark, how do we work on that? How do we, if we're stuck in a situation like that, do we make the number smaller? Do we have a discussion with the goalkeepers? How do we do this?
Yeah. Well, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think I see this time and time again, and I've seen it probably throughout my career in clubs. And there's this thing around, okay, right, your team, you've got half a pitch tonight. The other age group have got another half of the pitch. How many times do you stand there and actually look as the session's going on from the side, and you go, they're doing a possession over there, they're doing a possession over there, and there's a massive space that's not being used. And I go, there's some communication here that's broken down. And we go back to the communication around a goalkeeper coach and an outfield coach. How do we plan together to make sure that we best use our space, and go, do you know what? Today I'm dealing with defending the space. So I'm dealing with the goalkeeper defending space in front of them. So the nature of that is, today I need a little bit more space. What are you working on? Well, do you know what? We're working on possession in tight areas. Fantastic. So can we have a bit of your space for this? And then it's a bit of give and take. Now that might sound an easy way of dealing with it, and I know that's not always the case, but I would say, first and foremost, do we do that enough? My experience, no, we don't. and it's a simple conversation.
You know how I feel. The minute any drill that is being totally ridiculously unrealistic, like I prove a point. Like let's say even a shooting drill, like near far slot or something, and I've got somebody serving balls from end line like 10 yards out, and just like these little like baby balls. So it's like even if it's like 3-tiered shooting or something, and so like the third shot is like blowing my keeper into the back of the net. I was like, let's teach them something. See that pass? Just go get it. And they look at me like, well, they're supposed to take that third shot. Go pick it up. And they're like, what? I go pick it up. And then pick it up again. Pick it up again. Force them to play this ball the way it's supposed to be played, with the pace it's supposed to be played at, and force this to be game realistic, because they're throwing up little eggs for you to get blown into the back of the net line. So force this situation. I hate that. I don't like when things are. There are drills. We all know there are plenty of drills out there that are non-keeper friendly and stuff. There are times I pulled my keepers, period. And there are other times that I'm like, well, let's, if they're going to do this, let's manipulate the situation. Let's teach them how to do it. I'm sorry. For sure. And that's communication with the coach. I agree with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think on that particular situation, it's something that we've probably all seen, all experienced, and let's be honest, it's not necessarily just going to go away. I think we can work to affect it. I think in those situations, it's like, right, okay, how can we get the best out of this situation? Right. Now, again, it goes back to these understanding connections. I'm going, okay, how can I get the goalkeeper to understand the striker and the striker to understand the goalkeeper, and go, well, what makes it hard for you to score a goal? I'm talking to the striker now. What makes it hard for you to score a goal? And then the striker to go, well, do you know what? When you do this, it makes it really difficult for me to be able to complete the shot or get it on target, or it puts me off, etc. So start to sort of think about those discussions and go, right, okay, now can we start to add a few of those bits into the session as we go? And it might be that we do it on the fly. It might be that we have to do that. And it might be that it's planned. And that's where obviously your experience jumps in as a coach. But yeah, I think we're always going to get stuck in those situations. And I think that goes back to the relationships with you and the coach that's potentially delivering that session. Now, it might be that, going back to the start, right, okay, we're in these situations where the ball's going to be in a cutback situation. We're working on the goalkeeper defending the front post. I need, and we've seen in all of those pictures, there's been a defender tracking back. So a defender now putting pressure on the crosser or the player on the ball. There's been defenders in those front post type areas, 6-yard type areas, who are obstructing, who are looking to clear. I'm going, if I took a picture of that now and said, right, okay, how do we design our session to make it look like this in this final stage? Now it's our job as coaches to go, okay, what resources have we got? How can we make this happen? Okay, because actually, dual outcomes, it's really important that defender who's now tracking back, what's the best route to track back? How am I gonna stop? What's my emergency defending like? How am I going to defend 1v1? Actually, there's some massive outcomes we can get from that. Oh, and by the way, they need to be listening to the goalkeeper, because they're giving some really key communication details. So we're going, okay, right, what can we get out of this now? And there's some real gains just by having those simple conversations. And as we all know, like, suddenly you have a defender going towards a striker, the shot's a completely different shot.
Absolutely. And the pace on the pass to finish shot is different. And that's why I always say, if the more you can use pressure in game. And by the way, keep your keepers honest. So when you're doing a cutback situation and a slotted ball for a 3-goal situation or near post thing, keep your keeper honest. Every once in a while, take a shot near post, because I guarantee you the repetition, they're going to be leaning. They're going to be leaning. Take that shot in your post. I guarantee you'll catch them a couple times.
Omar, I want to bring this up with you, because obviously, you're the social media influencer here on this entire panel here, and posting sessions over and over and over again. And one of the things that, we've recognized, and we've obviously, had discussions about this in the past, is how you're trying to make sure that your sessions paint not only the picture of the positive, but also the negative aspects of what happened in the session. So that way, when you take that to the next session over, you have that understanding of like, okay, here's what was working, here's what wasn't working. And how important has that been for your maturation, especially like talking about a cutback situation? I mean, you've posted quite a bit of cutback sessions online.
Yeah, no, I think it's been huge. I think, especially with the feedback that I've been getting as well from coaches and the goalkeepers that were in my sessions. And honestly, the biggest thing that I've taken from the quarantine was obviously those conversations and just being willing to get constructive criticism. And one thing I heard from Tom Wheel, who's at Norwich City, he's the academy director there. He was telling me that he had a goalkeeper that they had brought in, and this goalkeeper was supposed to be the starter. They had all these, aspirations for him and all that, but in sessions, he just wasn't looking like himself. And they were showing guys who were the second and third choice goalkeepers who were outplaying him. And then, instead of saying, okay, he's having a bad time and, why did we buy this guy? He had a conversation with him and he realized that his sessions were too predictable. And this goalkeeper had an IQ, which if you put him into game-like situations and as game-like as you can, he's going to show he's significantly better with his decision-making than the other goalkeepers. So he said, okay, I have to go back to my session planning and start making things as game realistic as we can so that this goalkeeper's savviness and his unique capability to, read situations could come to the forefront. And he said once he made that transition from announced services, or not unannounced, but like a little bit more game-like to show you the process prior to the final action, he saw a complete shift in the goalkeeper's attitude towards training. So I think it goes back to, the cutback situations we're talking about and the learning capacities of different goalkeepers and what they need to, I guess, maximize their potential and their best qualities. And we're talking about now about, those cutback situations. Some goalkeepers play the percentages. Like that goalkeeper right there, he likes to come out and stay square because he probably just loves being in the action and wants to cut off that cross before anything happens. And other goalkeepers want to be more reactionary where they leave it open so that they're almost baiting the cross to the far post. And maybe they're better shot stoppers as they come across their goal. So I think it's just, for me at least, it's been peeling back after watching my sessions, peeling back those moments and seeing why certain goalkeepers chose specific actions, and then not being silent about it, but then having those conversations and saying, hey, like, why was it that you were square for 1 second, and then as that ball got played, you were already ready to move? And some kids will just say, you know what, I'm cutting it off so that they don't play that ball because I hate that ball, but I'm also, my body's already ready to shift so I can come across to make the save if it turns into a volley or a header. So when you have those conversations, now you realize, oh my God, you're playing the percentages of what you're best at, and that's why you're doing it. So showing those sessions, it's just having those conversations and just being as open as you can with the goalkeepers that you have and then the coaches that are watching it to hopefully just give the best picture you can for the goalkeepers.
Dude, I love what you just said in regards to – go ahead, Mark.
No, go on, Mike. You go and I'll go after.
I mean, I was just going to say, just in regards to, we were talking about language. Omar and I, we were talking about language earlier today. And you have to pick up little, in my opinion, you have to pick up little cues from youth keepers. Things like, I don't like those balls. I love those balls. Well, that right there already tells you a mentality of where that goalkeeper feels their attributes are stronger and where they're weaker. And based on that, their mentality, they're going to be better in the situations where they feel more confident, right? So Mark, you were talking about this earlier with me. You were talking about if a goalkeeper likes to overcommit, don't necessarily teach that out of them, but more try to teach them how to use it properly.
Yeah, so just going off the back of what Omar was saying as well there, I think there's some real key messages there. So you, as a goalkeeper, you have to know yourself. You have to know where you're at, what you're feeling in certain situations, what you're good at, what you struggle with, what you're not so good at. And as a coach, your relationship between your goalkeeper is really important in terms of understanding that, and that can take time, and you won't necessarily get it straight away, but you build the relationship, and then you hope that you get that little bit more of an open relationship where they're more comfortable talking about their weaknesses. Because let's be honest, nobody likes talking about being weak, but we all have parts of our game, our life that aren't perfect, and to be vulnerable is okay. So that's a big thing for me in terms of saying, do you know what, I'll be vulnerable. I'm not right all the time. Everything I do and say isn't always right. And everyone buys into that and goes, do you know what? I don't know the answer either. So I think that's then you're in a really powerful place then. Everybody, not just the coach, everybody's in a really powerful place of going, right, okay, brilliant. Now we can learn. Now we can get the best out of who we are, what we've got. So I think that first and foremost, knowing yourself as the goalkeeper, and then as a coach, knowing what that is for that person. I think first and foremost, that's really important. And when you understand that, you start to understand why people do things. Now, how many times do we hear a goalkeeper gets beaten at the front post and a commentator says, goalkeepers beaten at their front post. It's like that can't happen. That can't happen in the game. Never get beaten at your front post. Whatever you do, we was taught it when we was younger. Don't get beaten at your front post. And if you get told that, you start to believe it, and you start to go, right, okay, I need to be cautious here. I need to make sure I don't get beaten at my front post. You know what? If I get beaten in the opposite side, I'll take that. But whatever happens, I'm not getting beaten at my front post.
And see, you know who I'm going to bring up right now, Mike.
Alyssa Nair.
Yes. Every time she's overcautious for her near post. It's in her repertoire, and she gets beat far post every time. And at this level, and at playing starting goalkeeper for the United States national team, do you not think England and everybody's going to say that far post, that slotted ball to the far post is open every time because she overplays her near post, and every time she gets beat far post, and she's never made that adjustment because in her psyche, I don't know what it is. And listen, you're a great goalkeeper. I'm not taking anything against you. Start for the U.S. team. I know how hard that is. Trust me. So I'm not taking, but I'm saying this is a weakness in your game. And the bottom line is you're overcompensating near post. You've been beaten so many times on that ball, shot far post in that situation. Every time. And I say it to you, and when it happens, I'm texting Mike. I was like, dang, like, you know, and that is that psyche that can't get beat near post, can't get beat near post.
Hey, Mark, I'm going to ask Mark this question. I think someone messaged me today about the De Gea goal and stuff like that. And they're saying, oh, he's really turned the corner. He's not as good as he used to be. And my kind of like response to them was, is it that, or have teams had enough scouting report and enough film on him now that his deficiencies were always deficiencies, but now that we have more film on him and the strikers are becoming more intelligent of how to slot balls in certain areas, that his deficiencies are being exposed. And I feel like once you start putting those, you know, all those goals kind of tallied up, you'll start to notice a lot of the goals he's been scored on is him defaulting into a spread save and somebody finding an open pocket. And I think that has been one more thing, that has been the staple in a lot of his goals. So in my opinion, I think, again, like you said, as a striker, when you ask the question of the goalkeeper, like, what are the tough goals that you don't want to get scored on? Well, I'll cover my near post, but most likely if you hit it to the far post, that's where it's going to be open because I'm overcompensating.
Right.
Here.
You don't
so
think the forwards know that? You don't
exactly.
Think at this point, you don't think the forwards know that. You don't think
exactly.
You don't think next time they play against England or Holland or something like that, they're going to be like, look, if you're driving towards near post on there, like slide it far post because it's open because she's overcompensating and leading near post. They're doing as much as the goalkeepers are for knowing the players that are coming against them, but
absolutely.
They should know at this level. They should know.
They should, yeah. That I'm agree with you.
This is the key thing. You both mentioned it there. For me, is that teams now you get more access to footage than ever before. You can slow it down, speed it up. People comment on it online. Everyone can see it and really pull things apart, which is great. And you're absolutely right, Omar, around the opposition will look at what the goalkeeper does to the tiniest detail and understand what their traits are, what they're likely to do in certain situations, and how you can make best of that situation. Now, you're not going to stop that. That's happening. That's happening in most, if not every team at the highest level. So how do we then counteract that? And we go, well, we need to make sure we know what the striker's likely to do. Well, what are their traits? What can we do to stop them? And actually say, yeah, I have to use my strengths, but also I might have to think outside the box a little bit and do something a little bit different in a certain situation against a different type. So if we're talking about the situation, we're talking about defending the front post. Now, how many goalkeepers would be brave enough to take up a false position, knowing that winger who drives in gets their head down, looks up, gets their head down and delivers a ball based on what they've seen before they put their head down.
Exactly.
And you change the picture when they drop their head again. So you readjust your position. So you take up a false position to show the front post. So the shot's coming.
And the minute the head drops,
that situation. Head drops.
Change your position.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So now we go. Now you can't just do that. You can't just in a game go, oh, I'm going to do that. You have to practice that, and the only way you can practice it is by putting on realistic situations. Now, so now we're going right. Okay, do I know myself? Do I know the opposition? Okay, and now I'm going to add in the other one of do I know my teammates? Because do I know that the player tracking back with that winger is always going to be whoever it is, and this is how they defend 1v1. This is the way that they tend to show. This is how close they get to the ball. This is how far away they get from the ball. I'm likely to get a shot that's coming through legs. I'm likely to get a clear shot. Understanding actually what does my teammate do in these situations, which is going to affect me, and then having a better understanding of how now we work in tandem. So now I'm knowing myself, I'm knowing the opposition, and I'm knowing my teammate, and suddenly the scenarios become a lot easier to deal with. And I suppose on a sliding scale, if let's say, for example, right, how much do I know my teammate? I'm going, I've got low knowledge or I've got high knowledge. And if it's low, I'm going, okay, how do we increase it to a higher level? That might be sitting down and talking. It might be watch a clip together. What do you think of this? It might be doing more sessions together.
Yeah, and I would say, like, if you're going to teach coaches out there and stuff, if we just told you something like, oh my God, when they drop your head, take a step out and change the angle, and that will, not everybody drops their head. So,
No.
Yeah, exactly. So if you teach your keepers to look for that, or just like automatically touch, they're going to shoot. If the person doesn't drop your head and you take that step, you're sold. Like, they'll change it, and the ball's in the back of the net. So again, it's education. Again, it's the keepers. You have to teach your keepers to read the game, to read the players, to learn different scenarios, and to put them in where they apply. This isn't black and white. This isn't, oh, every time the person does this, this is what I do. That's not the situation. And that's the evolution of goalkeeping, of goalkeeping coaches, and everything. So if you're just doing one thing, it's not going to work anymore, period.
No. And I think the best goalkeepers work to their limits. And then the question is, well, how do you know your limit? If you're a young goalkeeper, how do you know your limit? If someone keeps pulling me back or telling me not to do something in a certain way, how do I ever know what my limits are? So you have to, as a coach, you have to let go a little bit and go, it's okay. Go and make the mistakes. Go and get it right. Go and get it wrong. Like, it's not about the success now. It's about the success in the future, which will only come through getting a bit wrong and getting a bit right.
Absolutely.
And
speaking of that,
take ego out.
No, but we talk about that all the time. Look, go fail. Figure it out. Be able to answer the questions. We talk about it every week. You have to understand why you're doing something, understand the reasons you're not doing something.
Speaking of every week, Saskia now actually has sessions starting up every week again, which is very, very exciting. But she's going to have to go in a few minutes right now.
I do. Can you believe that?
But
full mask and hazmat gear and everything.
But Omar, Mark, how are you guys doing on time? Do you guys want to continue the conversation, or we can start wrapping up? It's totally up to you guys how you guys are doing on time.
I'm fine.
You're fine?
Good, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, Saskia, if there's anything you want to say before you have to dismount and get off to the field, feel free right now. Other than follow her at Saskia_Weber.
No, it's just it's an honor, and obviously, Kelly Smith was the bane of my playing existence. So anytime, and I will always say that. You guys have a great squad, I love what you guys are doing in England with the Pro League and everything. If I had that back when I was playing in Japan, I would have loved to play for Man U or something like that. Trust me. So just keep it going. I love it. I love watching it. And everything you guys are doing is spot on.
I really appreciate that, and great to have the opportunity to speak with you. It's fantastic.
Absolutely, guys.
Well, hopefully the sessions will go well, Sask. Moving forward right now, guys, I want to bring up this because we're bringing up the mentality a lot here. And I think one of the biggest issues that we're having is that negative connotation that's coming up to youth keepers, which is creating this narrative in their mind that I can't do this, I can do this. Why? Because Mark, you were saying about not allowing goalkeepers to test their limits. How many times have you also been hearing people on sidelines, other teammates, other people at the youth levels? And I know it doesn't happen as much on the at the professional youth development side, but more at the amateur club side, is come off your line or hold your post. This micromanaging of goalkeepers from people that may not necessarily know what they're talking about, but because kids are so easily influenced, they listen to that and then they start believing I have to hug my post. I literally have to hug my post, or I have to come out for every through ball.
Yeah, I think that there's no question that that certainly the higher level you play, not just as a goalkeeper, as a player, you have to be so mentally tough. You have to be resilient, and you have to have the ability to. I suppose it goes back to really being self-aware and understanding yourself, and being really comfortable in yourself and what you're delivering and how you're doing it. To be able to park those comments. Now, I think it's easy to sit here and say, don't listen to it. You know, get out your head, concentrate on your game, and it's a lot easier to say it than it is actually to do it, especially if you're a young goalkeeper. I think the most powerful thing, and I've worked with some fantastic managers and some fantastic coaches, and when you create a culture, when you create a way of being as a group of players, as a goalkeeping unit within that group of players, and as a team, as a squad, managers that turn around and say, this is our style, this is the way we play. We massively appreciate your attributes, your qualities, your profile, and how you fit within our style. And do you know what? As long as you're doing what you think's the right thing in the right moment, you're trying to do the right thing. If you make a mistake, that don't worry. That I'm going to take all the pressure off you. It's about delivering and sticking to what we committed to and what we said we was going to do. Now, when I hear a manager say that, for me as a coach, it makes me go, okay, I can not relax in the sense of I don't need to make sure everything's planned and properly done, but it means, do you know what, we're on this journey, and it's expected that if we're going to play this, we're going to be brave, and we're going to be risky at times, and we're going to test our limits, like I've spoke about. There's going to be some mistakes and there's going to be some errors along the way, but we appreciate that the pluses and the positives are going to far outweigh the negatives. Go back to the Edison situation we were talking about. The positives are going to far outweigh the negatives. So when you've got that culture and that belief within a group, actually you learn that resilience to keep the outside noise out. And I think that's a really important quality to build into players, into goalkeepers specifically, who probably hear more of that from their position on the pitch, and just be really comfortable within themselves that what they're doing is the right thing in that moment.
I want to bring up this, and Omar, I know that you had discussed this before in regards to body language a lot of times, in regards to how a goalkeeper is positioned, how their starting shape is, how all of that. And a lot of times people will have a point of view and a perception of what the goalkeeper is thinking or how the goalkeeper is taking the situation without being that goalkeeper. And I'll be honest, I've been guilty of it before in the past as a goalkeeper coach, where I'm like, oh, that guy's lazy, or, oh, they're just too hyper or whatever. Not understanding that it may just be a matter of like, that goalkeeper that's just who that person is. Like, that's a quiet, shy, timid kid, big hulking type of person. If I try to get them to be explosive and dynamic, that's never going to happen. So how do I use that goalkeeper, who that person is as a human being, to have them play the best percentages for how they want to play and how they can play? Does that make any sense? Am I just completely rambling right here?
No, it kind of makes sense, but I kind of want to get to Mark's point real quick, and then I'll hop onto this one.
Okay.
No, I think Mark's point was brilliant. I think that's a lot of things that I've kind of had to reflect on in the past few months, is my patience as a human being. So like you're talking about, Mike, how we need to kind of understand where the player is coming from. I think for me personally, I needed to stop pointing at the player and saying they're making technical flaws, they're doing this, this, and this, and kind of reflect on my own coaching style as well. And I realized that in many facets of my life, I have a lack of patience to see things through. And I think that I realized that from the quarantine, that a lot of coaches are always talking about there's no right or wrong way, but you have to be patient enough to allow the goalkeeper the immunity and the safe space to find their own solutions. And that kind of like stuck with me. And so far I've tried to apply it, still sometimes a lack of patience, but I've really tried to apply it. And I've noticed that I think it was Anthony White from Bournemouth who said a lot of these goalkeepers can find solutions better than you can teach it. So I've had the kind of, okay, how can I apply that? And I've applied it and I've noticed it. So now back to, I think it was Thomas Schleck. I spoke to him on a podcast recently, and he was saying that.
Hold on, Omar. How many names can you drop in one?
Sorry, my mind is going all over the place. But essentially, what I'm trying to get at is when you have a goalkeeper and you, like Mark is saying, you want to have that kind of collaboration within the group. It's important that you spend a lot of time recruiting those goalkeepers who you feel that patience that you're applying to them will pay off in the future. And I was talking to Thomas Schleck from Dortmund, and he was saying that when he was at the team in Austria, Mike, help me out real quick, Red Bull Salzburg. He was saying that when he had the privilege to find the first team goalkeeper, he had to go and scout these goalkeepers, and he had each goalkeeper that they had on a short list, they gave them 10 games. After they watched those 10 games, let's say they had 10 goalkeepers, they brought it down to 6. After those 6 goalkeepers were named after watching those 10 games and, filtered down to 6, then those 6 goalkeepers would be watched 8 more times. And then after that, they bring them down to 3 goalkeepers. And then those goalkeepers would be watched again another 8 more times. And then they got Golaxi, who's there now. And they're saying that the process in which you have to go through to recruit these goalkeepers to see if they have what you need in terms of the club's needs as a goalkeeper, it takes a long, long time. So now we're talking about youth goalkeepers and the patience we have to have. Sometimes I think coaches don't recruit well enough. And when they get these goalkeepers in, they don't have that patience because from the recruiting process, the goalkeeper never fit their system anyways. And I think to the full point now is the patience to allow the goalkeepers the immunity to do what they need to do to get to where they need to get to. It all comes down to how you recruit them, and how you recruit them will obviously allow you to give them that patience because you see full potential that they're going to turn into something that the club is going to be, hopefully willing to hang on to.
By the way, before we move on there, right there, I just want, if anybody out there is listening, and we're going to get complaints right there. Omar was referring to Sport at Leipzig.
Leipzig, in
the Bundesliga, because Jesse Marsch does not have Petr Galashi. I'm sure he'd love to have Petr Galashi.
But I'm going to follow up with that, Mark. Just a quick question to you, and I know you've been doing this for a long, long time. And my question to coaches who have that pedigree or who have the experience is, please tell me that it's not just me who has been impatient. Like, can you tell me that it's not just me? I'm not going crazy, that you guys have had those moments where, like you said, your idea for the goalkeeper wasn't realized right away, but you kind of took your foot off the gas and said, you know what, let them figure it out.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think we've all been there. And I think you will be there. You could still go back and forth into that situation of being there, not being there, wanting to be paid. Depends what situation you're in. So if you're in a development world and you've got time, fantastic. If you're in a performance world of you have to win at the weekend, or you have to win a major tournament, or you have to do those things, then the situation might be slightly different, and you might not have actually the grass time, the session time that you might have. It's, let's say internationally, you could go on a 10-day camp and only have 5-6 sessions. Whereas if you're in a club and you're working with a player every day, you have greater contact time. So I think it depends the environment you're in, and sometimes you have to push to make things happen. I wanted to take, it was really interesting what you're saying. I wanted to take us to the social corner because, especially with young goalkeepers, but it applies to all goalkeepers. I think there's a danger. We look at someone, they walk through the door, they get in goal, they perform an action, and we judge them based on that action, what we see, and we go, have we got any idea about that person and what's gone on before that point? So my point being, let's say we've got an under 12 goalkeeper. They come to my training session. Training session starts at 5. We're going to throw them straight into a session where they've got to make decisions. They've got to really put themselves on the line. They've got to they've got to push their limits and really test themselves, make decisions. And we expect them to walk into that session. We design a session which is fantastic and it's going to do all of those things. But we have absolutely no idea what that player's days look like. So they've just been through the most stressful day at school, exams, class to class, those situations, right? They've got home, they've rushed down something to eat, they've jumped in a car, they're sat in traffic, they were late. Parents got home late from work, couldn't get them there until they turn up a couple of minutes late. They're stressed. Now they're jumping into a session where they're getting judged, And we just judge them on what we're seeing in that moment. And it's a really dangerous place to be. We expect them to be able to do it, but we have no idea about what's gone on before, what their life's been. And that's the really important thing about knowing your players. If you don't know your players, you're going to miss a huge indicator of performance in terms of the lifestyle they're leading and how they're having to live their life. And that's probably something that I've experienced. I've seen it in player meetings. You know, a player meeting and a player's looking at the floor. What's the thing as a coach delivering a meeting? You think straight away when the player's not looking.
Not interested.
They're not interested. They're not listening. Yeah. And it's a dangerous assumption to make, because it might just be their way of taking it in. They might need to focus on something to hear and to listen and to picture it in their mind. They might be visualizing what you're saying and making a picture. And you've just assumed that they're not listening and they're not watching and they're not taking care and attention. So you say, come on, focus, listen. And actually they're like, you've just singled them out in a group, and they were the best learner in the group. But you've just made that judgment based on your experience and but actually it might be wrong. So knowing the players is really, really key. I don't know if that helps answer your question, Omar, but
no, it does.
I mean, look. Go ahead, Mark.
There has to be. Oh.
No, go.
I was just going to say.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, I was just going to say, and you know, just maybe to paint a picture for some younger goalkeeper coaches out there who might be dealing with such a situation. And I learned from this the hard way. Is I thought that this one girl was just completely, for the lack of a better term, just not trying and didn't want to be there and had no inclination and wanted to be a goalkeeper, yada, yada, yada. And when I talked to her parents later, they're like, so sorry about her session today. She's like, so-and-so, this boy was going to be at the mall and she had to come to the training instead. And her mind was not here because of that. And at first I was very upset because I was like, how dare this young lady not think that this goalkeeper training session is the most important thing in the world. But then I started having the empathy of also realizing, and I think one of the problems that we have a lot of times as goalkeepers, not goalkeeper coaches, not just as from the training aspect, but also from the mental aspect, is forgetting that we're dealing with a 12-year-old or an 11-year-old or a 13-year-old, you know, and think about what is important when you're that age and how you see the world too, you know, and it just makes me completely change. I mean, Omar, we talked about just the fact of like goalkeeper coaches who they talk about making game realistic sessions, but then yet they play at a higher level than the level that their players are training at. Well, if you start hitting the ball at a pace that's not realistic to that game, or the movement on the ball is dissimilar to what they're seeing, that's not the real demands of the game, like Nathan Thackeray was talking about. But if also you don't take into consideration what can that person process and how does that person think at that age, you're also not being realistic to the demands of the game. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And I kind of want to get back to both points, Mike and Mark as well. The idea, I think, behind any session or any interpersonal relationship between you and the goalkeepers, I think there needs to be an intentional, from the start, an intentional decision that you're going to make the effort. And I think that has been the biggest, again, I learned a lot during the quarantine, but that has been my biggest kind of takeaway is stop thinking so much about the X's and O's and start getting to know the person. And like we've talked about, like Mark said, some kids may look disinterested, but that's their way of showing, or that's their way of learning. And until you have those intentional conversations and say, hey, Mark, you know, I'm just wondering, earlier today in the training session, I gave you some feedback. You didn't respond. What was going on in your head there? They said, no, I'm just going through the progressions in my head of what you're saying and how I can apply that. So now, like you said, those conversations, all you needed to do, go out of your way. And it seems easy, but sometimes we can understand, even relationships, not having the proper communication, and all you needed to say was, hey, how are you doing today? And they'll unleash and they'll unload a lot of stuff. So I think that's the intentional, I guess, idea of, I need to ask this person what they're doing, collect that data, and then now my coaching will be that much more effective because it'll go even further because I know what to and what not to say. So that's what I would tell young goalkeeper coaches is just make the effort. Even if it's uncomfortable and you're not the most sociable person, or you don't talk to people that much, just ask the goalkeeper the question, hey, you know, even if you don't want to upfront ask, let them do something in a session, get your own data and then ask them after, or even text them and say, hey, I noticed this. How can I best communicate with you in this situation? So hopefully, again, that added to Mark's point, and I'm really hoping that it did.
Yeah, you know, I want to bring this up with Mark here because, you know, again, this is just from an outsider's perspective, but it seems that you all do a very good job of creating community at the FA, whether that's on the coaching side, whether that's on the playing staff side. How important has that been in order to create that culture in the FA that has kind of led to these really, really strong youth sides for England?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of fantastic staff, and I think it's all built on relationships. It always is built on people. You look at the goalkeeping side of things. Tim's done an exceptional job in terms of the goalkeeper coaches we've got around, how we coach the goalkeepers, what we do with the goalkeepers. He's obviously had a massive part to play in that, but all of everything we do is probably born out of connection and understanding and conversations. And it's come from probably from the goalkeeping point of view. It's come from us being brave enough to put ourselves out there and have some tough conversations with coaches and have a voice. We spoke about it at the very start, and we was talking about stepping out onto the pitch and coaching as a goalkeeper coach in front of everyone, team. Like there does get a point when you step on the pitch and you do that at a certain level, you better be ready, because if you get it wrong, or you don't make the right impressions, you can lose players, you can lose a manager's trust to say, yeah, I trust you to go and put a session on, or put that part of the session on, because time is precious. So I think from a goalkeeping point of view, we've done a good job of that, in terms of the messages that we've fed and the language that we use with the goalkeepers, with the outfield players. There's a real common theme and a common language that rings true, and I think that's helped. Listen, we don't get it right all the time. We've got lots wrong, and you learn from those things. No different to what you're asking the players to do. We've got lots wrong, but we've got lots right, and I think you have to stick with your beliefs, and that would be the big thing. I think we've got a really clear style, and when you've got a really clear style and really clear understanding of what that looks like, all the building blocks which you've been employed your professionalism to add to and to reinforce, you just get you get given that probably that airtime to then go and make things better, and we've definitely been given that. But yeah, we've got a lot of good people who are capable of doing that, for sure.
Yeah. I want to bring this up with both of you guys right here, because this is something that I've been struggling with personally as a coach. And when we're talking about a holding post situation, a near post situation, yeah, one of the things that comes up, and I used to have issues with it, because I used to think it was defying authority, but then I realized, the smarter the kid, the more likely they are to ask questions and challenge you in regards to what you're teaching them. And I had, but they can score here. They can score here. They can score here. And I think the one thing I've been trying to really showcase to young goalkeepers, and I'm talking about 9s, 10s, 11s, where this type of question comes up a lot, is that you can't stop people from scoring. Like, goals will be scored. It's going to happen. So, Mark, how have you worked with young goalkeepers into understanding, like, goals will be scored, and I'm just giving you options to play different percentages based on what I have seen has worked?
Yeah, I think I've obviously worked with throughout my career as a coach. I've worked with a lot of young goalkeepers, run goalkeeping departments within clubs, and you see goalkeepers come in who what they do is they follow a role model that they've watched do it on TV, and they want to be them, so they do it that way. Or they've been taught by a coach, or they've been taught by their dad to do it a certain way, or their mum to do it a certain way. Like they've been put in these situations, and they're just doing all they know. They're performing actions of how they know. Now, the more people you come across, the more you get affected by what you see, and the more you probably become your environment. So every environment you go into, you become a little bit of that environment, and it's probably it's probably true of us as coaches as well. I think the coaches I've worked with, I take the best bits. I like to think from each coach, and I've evolved over time. Now we need our goalkeepers to do that as well. And I think the point you made around goals are going to get scored. That's life. That's football. The game is about scoring goals, and we're the ones that need to spoil the party. Now, you have to look in every situation that you're in and go, okay, well, what's the biggest threat, and how can I nullify that threat? How can I stop that happening? So it's about teaching your goalkeepers to be the best decision makers in the moment, to be the most effective, so to deliver the most effective action. Like, we go back to the videos we saw about the positioning. Now, if we look at the first one where the body shape's really open, we're going, right, you're nullifying probably a direct shot at goal, but that's probably a low percentage of actually what could happen here. It's just a small percentage. What could happen is the ball could get fizzed across or through the 6-yard box, and I can't affect that. So you've taken that out of the game that you can do. It might get set back from a shot through bodies. Now, yeah, you turned into your goal, so now you might get a little bit more reaction time. So okay, that might help you a little bit. But you're now going, okay, but if you do that, it's giving them this. And same for if you're the goalkeeper that squares off at the front post, and you go, okay, so you can deal with the front post, you can deal with the cutback situation. The ball at the back, it gives you a little bit more time to turn in. If it's cut back to the penalty spot, probably your biggest threat is going to be your ability to turn quickly, buy yourself time, and get inside the line, get inside the posts to defend the goal. And that's where the positioning part, like how far do I start in front of my post, because my first turn might just take me in line with my post, not even into the goal. So you start to go, okay, if you take up that position, this could happen. So it's about understanding or getting the goalkeepers to understand the situation and what could happen. And then this is the bit where then you start to find out about, okay, well, what kind of goalkeeper are you? What kind of goalkeeper do you want to be? What are your attributes? Are you so quick that when you turn and get your body shot, you can get your body back in line with the goal? If that's the case, well, why not square off at the front post? If you haven't got that ability to do that, well, you might have to be a little bit more goal protective and a little bit more open and err on the side of caution with that one. So again, it's about knowing what you're good at and knowing how you can affect. But you can never stop. You can never stop the fact that goals will be scored. The best goalkeepers either let the least in through their effective actions, or let the least in because they're brilliant organised and they've got brilliant connections with their defenders.
Yeah, or you're Omar, based on the videos that we saw from your training from last year, and you can do both. Based on Omar posted videos of him getting ready for a tournament in Armenia, and would you have a little walker GIF?
I will say I put on a session that I would have put on for the kids that I train. And I realized that there was a lot of little things that I could change. And I think sometimes once you're actually in it, you realize that the coaching points that you're making, you need to understand what the goalkeeper is going through and what they're seeing. So I was able to notice, it was a shot and it was a cutback movement. And as I moved it across, I was just watching my own footwork, and I was like, okay, well, if I were to tell the goalkeeper that this was wrong and this was wrong, then I'm only looking at the negatives. How about I actually, instead of telling them what they did wrong, I asked them a question. They tell me what they felt, and then from there, then we can have a discussion versus me being that voice that tells them what they did wrong. So now their psychology is, okay, I'm going to actually have a conversation where I have a say in what I thought I did wrong and what I thought I did well, versus, oh my God, after this shot, if I don't make a save, Coach Omar's going to just tell me what I did wrong. So now they have no buy-in, they have no accountability as to the solution. It's more of me giving them the solution. So I was happy that I was able to get back in there to actually realize that. And not to say that I'm always doing it, but I think it's helped a lot.
But that's the skill of coaching, isn't it? To be able to go, like, see a situation and make that decision about, right, okay, it is now the right time where actually, do you know what? It's okay. I can go in and step in and coach. That's fine. Like, no one says you can't do that. Is it the time when actually I go, okay, I've got 3 goalkeepers here who are doing the same session, and they're all moving in different ways to get to the end outcome. And I go, come on, let's have a talk about footwork. Let's have a talk about movement. How do you do it? Okay, brilliant. How do you do it? What's the differences? Okay, what's the pros? What's the cons? And just get them having a discussion. And I think especially with young goalkeepers, it's amazing how many of them influence the other goalkeeper, and they go, oh yeah, I'm going to try that. And then suddenly they go, why have you started doing that? Oh, I saw someone else doing it. We were talking about it. I saw the first team goalkeeper do it, so I wanted to try it. So they start to watch and learn off other people. So you don't have to be the one that goes in and tells, but what you've recognized as a coach is that there's some differences there. And then you're talking about, okay, well, what's best for you? Well, why not try this one? See if it works for you. And that's with young goalkeepers, but you work with some senior pros, and I've worked in clubs with senior pros, and you'll have some goalkeepers that they've been in the game a long time, and they've always done something a certain way, and you go, right, how do I need to affect them, or how do I affect them? And I always think the more a player, a goalkeeper has been in a situation, the better they should be at dealing with it, because they've seen it thousands of times, they've dealt with it thousands of times, so they've got loads of referential experience, we call it, of what they've seen. Now that's brilliant, that's great, but someone else comes, like new goalkeeper on the block comes in and does it different but still as effective, and you go, okay, that's different to them, but they've been doing that for all those years successfully, or it's worked okay. Now someone new comes on the block, it's like, okay, well, I should try some of that because that might be really good for me, but no one ever taught it. I never saw anyone do it before. And I was thinking about it the other day. I can't remember who I was talking to, but I'm going to take it off of football, but if you're an accountant, back in the day before technology, you had to write down, you had to do the workings on a piece of paper, and then suddenly the calculator got invented, and you suddenly it was like easier. So you had to adapt. Well, why am I still doing it like that when I can do it like this? And then suddenly the smartphone gets invented. It's got a calculator on it, and you can do everything on the move. And you don't. Things are evolving all the time, and it's no different in our world where you go, okay, I'd be silly not to give it a go and go, I'm always going to go back to my paper and write it down, because there's another way of doing it which is a lot more efficient. So it's about being open-minded.
I mean, I'll straight up say, like, I've learned from other goalkeepers I'm coaching. I've never thought of it that way before. I've never seen it like that way before. And that took a little bit of ego dropping for me to start letting that happen. And it, it takes maturation as well too, as a coach. One thing I wanted to bring up in regards to, Mark, what you're saying about, goalkeepers doing things certain ways. When you're in an environment, and this comes from Jake Davis at University of Virginia, he says he wants to know, like, is it difficult when you're, working with the FA and you're working with all the keepers, throughout the different levels up to the senior team, and they've got their club environments. And then when you bring them in for identification camps, especially when you're looking for profiles and you're looking to get them at the youth level. I know at the senior level, for the most part, you're not really going to change a goalkeeper per se. But is that still something, even at that youth environment, you're like, they spend the majority of their year with their pro club, in their youth academy, and things are being done there. I don't want to undo what's being done or make things more difficult for them when they get back.
Yeah, I think you at international level, you'll always have that, especially through probably the pathway. The key is not about necessarily changing them and telling them they have to be a certain way, because what they actually have to be is adaptable. So let's say, for example, a goalkeeper comes and plays for us, and they have to play to play it with England. They have to play a certain style. They have to be able to do a certain thing, perform in a certain way. But let's say the style at their club is the complete opposite to that. Now, just because they're in that environment playing in that certain way doesn't mean that they shouldn't be in our environment if they can do the things that we need them to be able to do. So it's actually being able to be adaptable. Now, what we do, and Jamie Anderson, who works as the goalkeeper coach within the pathway, does a great job of this, is that the relationships with the goalkeeper coaches at the clubs, again, is the important bit in terms of having the discussions and going, Mike, I've got your goalkeeper coming with me next week. What have you been working on? This is the things we're going to be looking to work on. Is there anything you want me to steer away from, and why? And let's have a discussion about it. And if it's something that actually, what I believe in and we really need to go after, let's have that discussion and go, right, we need to find some middle ground here, and this is why it's important, and have the conversation. So at least it's not done without them knowing. So the actual understanding and the alignment between both is really key. That's how we try. That's how we try and deal with it. I think you'll have your club influences, you'll have your your influences from when you've been brought up and how you become a goalkeeper in the first place. You have your international ones, but then you'll always have influence from outside as well. So whoever the latest best player, best goalkeeper is on the block, people want to follow. So if everyone's talking about Edison and his distribution, everyone wants to be a part of that. Like, everyone wants to try a bit of that higher support position, wants to support between defense, wants to be able to play the ball beyond, wants to be able to play through the press. Like, they want to do all those things. So goalkeepers and players, good players, will always be moving and thinking beyond anyway. So I think they'll naturally adapt. And I think as coaches, we'd be silly if we thought that we hold all the knowledge and the key to their success, because actually it's going to come from a lot of different places.
I mean, I love what you just said there in regards to having that communication with the club coaches. I think that's one of the issues I've seen, and I'm not going to point straight to U.S. Federation or any other federation. I've just seen it in general with, and a lot of it has to do with not only the youth staff from the national side, but also the club staff too. Like, if you're sending a keeper to the 15s, then you should proactively contact the 15s and talk to them about, like, hey, this is what we've been working on, that sort of a thing, and start that dialogue if that dialogue's not coming at you already. And I'm just speaking to, some young goalkeeper coaches here who work at high profile clubs who may be put in this situation to do that. So listen to somebody like Mark. But before we wrap up here, I wanted to bring up a thing that Tim Dittmer brought up to me that really changed my way of how I approach creating autonomy in goalkeepers. And Omar and I, we've had this discussion as well too, in regards to, are they really understanding what you're saying? Are you really creating thinking goalkeepers, or are you getting goalkeepers that are just mimicking what you're telling them to do to either appease you, or because they think that'll just, that's what they're supposed to do, is just follow orders. And I started realizing a lot of it had to do with how I approach the questions and how I go about it. So like, Omar and I, we had this discussion. It's like, okay, instead of saying like, so what did you do wrong here? And then spoon feeding the answers type of a thing, or saying words like wrong. It's like, okay, like what variations, can we make here? So I kind of want to get your thoughts on maybe buzzwords or language that you've seen that's been work effectively to create that thinking goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think it depends on what level, I suppose, you coach at, because it will probably look slightly different if you're in I suppose the performance as opposed to the development. And at times you might need to be more direct at certain points. What I would say is the truth always comes out in what you see. So the actions that the goalkeeper performs will tell you whether they're doing what's comfortable to them, or whether they're trying to buy into what you're asking them to do. And I think from a coaching point of view, they're the bits you have to cling on to. So when you see them do something well, the subtle comment as you're walking off the pitch around, that was unbelievable what you tried to do there, is as powerful as an hour-long coaching session, that you've just closed that loop of learning, and you've reinforced something in their mind that goes, yeah, we did that, I did this, we achieved this, and they've recognized it. I'm going to go and do that again, because it's like people like praise, right? Like everyone likes to get praised. And to be that person who just drops those subtle hints in, those subtle comments, can be so powerful. But likewise at times, and this is where as a coach you have to probably be clever to go, at times you might need to go just rein it in a little bit and say, what did you think of that today? Like, what about that moment in the game? Like, and actually get them to talk about it. And do you know what? 9 times out of 10, your goalkeeper is going to turn around to say to you, that wasn't good enough there, or that didn't feel right. I didn't approach that in the right way. That they'll be honest with you, and it goes back to the relationship thing. I know I've spoken about relationships tonight a lot, but I really, really believe that if you can build that, it makes your job as a coach a lot easier, because ultimately you're there for them. you're not there for yourself. You're there for them to make them better or to help them get better. That's your sole purpose. So there's no point you being against each other or you having your guard up. I think the brutal reality ultimately at performance level is that a player will always see you as the decision maker. So the vulnerability side is sometimes harder to let your guard down as a player, because ultimately you think, well, if I say something that could affect could affect me being in the team, it could affect me playing, it could. So so you have to get the balance. But yeah, I think that the subtle coaching is the most effective, where you recognize something and you're clever enough to say, I saw that, and it can be so much more powerful in terms of reinforcing what they're doing.
Man, and I'll save my voice. I'll tell you that. That's a lot less throat lozenge just for me. So
for sure.
All right. Well, we've been going. I mean, Mark, honestly, I mean, you've committed your entire evening to us. So I mean, just honestly, this really means a lot to us that you're willing to do it. Before we kind of wrap up, Omar, do you have anything you want to kind of add on to or ask before we wrap up right here? And then we'll plug all the FA learning stuff.
Yeah, no, I think to kind of I guess summarize what I think we're all trying to get at, and maybe mainly for me, is I've been really trying to promote curiosity in my goalkeepers. Just be curious about the position, whether it's you're watching your own film, watching game film of somebody else, professional training, your own training. Just be curious to find solutions. And I think once you become really curious as a goalkeeper, you're going to be able to, instead of DMing me and messaging me, hey, Omar, how do I work on my bottom hand save? You're going to be able to answer those questions yourself. And if you don't, at least you started to at least the process of trying to answer it yourself, to find your own solutions. And in games, like Mark said, we're kind of the voice in training, but in games, you don't really have a voice to look to. It's going to be your own thoughts and your own inner voice. So trying to almost become friendly with that inner voice in sessions and post sessions when you're at home, finishing up a tough workout with Mark, sit down and reflect. And when you start reflecting, you start becoming curious of, oh, wow, there was one ball that went to the far post. Was I hugging my near post? And then once you have that mentality, then the next session you go out there and no one's told you anything, but that inner voice, you and that inner voice had that conversation. And now you're making strides without anybody having to have a conversation with you. And I think as coaches, we need to, I guess, like you said, Mike, autonomy to allow curiosity, and curiosity needs to be discussed. Because if you have something in your head that you're curious about and you don't discuss it, then it's just a thought. So I think allowing that autonomy to have those discussions, and like we said, going that extra mile to figure out what it is that's on your mind to get it out. And I think that is my last point, is all I'll say.
I think you put it succinctly, and I love the fact, and I know that today's episode was supposed to be about holding post and understanding that situation, but I think delving into this actual coaching mental point of view of how to coach and being coachable, I think is so important. Even if we stray from the topic. Speaking of that, Mark, I know you're not a big social media guy, so we won't plug your social media on here. But if people here do want to check out more of the courses that are going on in the FA, and I know obviously because of the current climate that we're in right now, the actual physical sessions are not taking place, courses. But I'm sure obviously you guys will start promoting those once those do become available again. Where is the best place for people to reach out if they want to check out some of the content the FA is putting out there? Yeah,
so the FA Learning have had a new YouTube channel. So great place to sort of go on, and all of the webinars are stored on there. With coaching content, and also the goalkeeping interviews that myself and Tim have done with the goalkeepers and coaches. So hopefully there'll be some resource on there that will be good for people to listen to and just get a bit of thought provoking, really.
And those don't count towards continuing education credits or anything like that, do they? Or do some of them?
So some of them would do within England, obviously within the FA. Yeah.
Okay. Well, awesome, man. Well, honestly, Mark, thanks again, guys. Contact at Inside the 18 Media. That's the number 18media.com. If you have a guest suggestion or a topic suggestion, shout out to Jake Davis, Insider, for suggesting this topic. Honestly, that's why this topic happened, made it happen. Again, at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms. I'm going to rest my voice. That's all the time on Inside the 18. And we are out. Later.